أهلا بيكم في بودكاست كربون. معاكم أحمد رجب.
Welcome again in a new episode of Carbon Podcast, and today we have a very special guest for a very special topic that we have, very crucial topic that really very important for everybody in the industry. Today we have Trish Kerin. Hi Trish, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you today?
Yeah, everything is good. Yeah. So I'm really happy that we have you here today with us in Carbon Podcast today to discuss about this important topic, the process safety in the industry. So under the name of the process safety at a glance. And I'm sure that we will get a lot of information, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge from you about our topics today that we will discuss. So once again, I'm really grateful for you to accepting our invitation here. Thank you.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Okay, before we start, I want to give like a very small introduction about Trish. I cannot cover everything for sure. So Trish, she has like almost 30 years of experience within the industry and the process safety, and she has been holding like many prestigious positions in different corporates. I think recently she is the director and lead like Karen. This is the private business. And before that, she was the independent chair Major Hazards Advisory Committee at the WorkSafe Victoria. And formerly, she was the director at IChemE Safety Center at IChemE. And also, she used to be the board member at the National Offshore Petroleum Safety and Environmental Management Authority. And I cannot cover everything. It's very, I would say, very broad experience. So I will give you the chance to introduce yourself here for sure.
Thank you, Ahmed. So, yeah, I've had a very broad range of experience in my career. So I started off as a mechanical engineer, fresh young graduate engineer, 30-something years ago. And I went to work in the oil industry, and I started to do designing and installing of aviation fueling systems, which was really interesting and fun work. But then after a little while, I went and worked in a refinery, and I started to get more operational experience in working in a refinery, working on shift, understanding all the dynamics of what goes on in an operating facility that is quite unlike any sort of other business. I think, when you corporate roles, even engineering and project roles, they're very different when you consider the operational facility. And that's really where I started to discover process safety. And in fact, historically, where I managed to cause a couple of process safety incidents over my career very early on, where I made mistakes and those mistakes resulted in incidents. Fortunately, nobody was ever seriously hurt. Nobody was ever killed. And they were minor in nature, but they were still a potential more significant consequence, and certainly process safety in nature. And so after several years working in the oil industry, I decided I really wanted to work in safety. I'd started to work in safety a little bit and then ended up back in operations management role. And I didn't want to be an operations manager. I was very skilled at operations management, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do in life. So I took the opportunity to go back into safety. And I went and worked for a chemical company as their safety manager, and that was managing both process safety as well as occupational safety and environment as well. So I have sort of done that whole EHS suite of areas that people tend to sort of congregate into in this field. And in that time, I really discovered that my preference was process safety over occupational safety. And so that sort of led me further down the path through various different company mergers and acquisitions. I ended up again as a safety manager in another company, a gas company. But interestingly, I was the OHS manager again. And to a certain extent, I really enjoyed what I got out of that particular activity, because there was a lot of focus on culture improvement and, really embedding strong safety leadership. And I really enjoyed that part of it. But I wanted to get back into process safety. And the Institution of Chemical Engineers said, we want to start a safety centre focused on process safety. And I jumped at that opportunity to go and start the centre for them. So I've been doing that for the last 11 years. I left that role at the end of January 2025. And now I'm on to, as you said, my own business, Lead Like Kerin, where I focus predominantly on process safety, leadership, and governance aspects. So not so much technical risk assessment. That's not really my thing anymore. I'm really more focused on the leadership aspects of how we improve our process safety outcomes. So a whole lot of different experiences, a few different industries thrown in there, engineering to operations to leadership and executive leadership roles, and obviously, as I said, OHS and process safety as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting profile and very, I would say, yeah, a lot of experience, yeah, for sure. And as we always say that here in podcast and Carbon podcast, we are always hosting the high profile, the top notch expert, the ones that who's have the scratches on shoulder, right? They have the real experience, yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and really, I would be very grateful for you and again to accepting our invitation today. And I know that you will add a lot to our audience from your experience in our topic today. So I want to start from the beginning, like the bottom line thing. That what is the importance of the process safety in our industry?
Yeah,
Like, what is the crucial
absolutely.
rule here? Yeah, like everybody right now, you know that I have seen like many, not only chemical engineers, as we have been talking before, that it shouldn't be only the chemical engineers, but I have seen many engineers. They are trying to shift to the process safety profession. I don't think it's a trendy or a trending something like whatever we have here before, but we really need to highlight or shed some light on the importance of the process safety. How crucial is that in our industry?
Yeah, so absolutely. Any industry that has the potential for a catastrophic event to occur needs to be managing process safety more effectively. And that's not only the process industries, that's the catch here. We're talking about catastrophic level events that are a result of a loss of control of some sort. So, we've loss of control of, it might be our containment systems, and we spill a flammable vapor and it ignites and explodes and kills people. Or it could be loss of control of energy systems. It could be, things like high voltage systems that we lose control of, electricity generation, for example, a turbine motoring out of control until it disintegrates, those sorts of things. Or it could even be things in the aviation sector. So, air traffic control. When we lose control of how we manage our air traffic flows, then we can potentially have catastrophic outcomes, as we tragically
Sure.
saw a couple of months ago in Washington, D.C., with the collision of the helicopter with the passenger aircraft.
Yeah.
So, where we've got these potential for catastrophic level events that are very low likelihood, they don't happen every day. And that's good they don't happen every day, because they're so catastrophic when they do. And so, anytime we have this potential, we really need to be focusing on managing our process safety elements so that we can ultimately prevent that catastrophic event happening. If we can't, then we do have to look at the mitigation side as well. So we are then down to, okay, we've now lost control. How do we mitigate and minimize the impact that we're having, whether it's to people, our equipment, the environment, those sorts of things?
Yeah, very clear. Yeah. So it is the probability of that we have any catastrophic. So that's why we need to have the process safety in our hands, like in our industry. And it is not like any more luxurious department in any corporate. Like I think in back in time, it was like very luxurious to have the process safety, right? But right now it became a mandatory that we have the process safety, and we should have the high skilled people in the process safety. Not only the high skilled, they should have the good knowledge, the scratches on their shoulder, as we mentioned, that they should be or they should have the impact on the decisions within the corporate. Yeah. So yeah, this is very clear about the crucial. So this will take us to our next point, as we know the importance of the process safety or the role of the process safety engineers within the corporates. So as I told you that I have seen many engineers, young engineers, and even seasoned professional engineers. They are shifting to the process safety career, but we need to really highlight, because again, I think we had some it is a little bit vague about the competencies, what exactly the competencies, the skills, the knowledge that the engineer should has before he took the decision to shift to the process safety engineering. So among your a huge experience, and that long experience that you have among many corporates, and the very important role that you had with iChemy, as you were like building the process safety center within the iChemy. I would like to hear from you, from your experience, from your thoughts. What exactly should be the competencies, the knowledge within the process, or the engineer himself to shift to the process safety engineer?
Yeah, so there's certainly a few different components I want to cover and talk about and draw a light to that are really quite important. But it's also actually, I'm going to start by saying we have a great need for competent and passionate process safety professionals in the world. There's actually not enough of us right now. So if you're a great process safety professional, you can pretty much have pick of jobs right now because industry is calling out for process safety professionals. And I know when I talk to my peers and my colleagues around the place, they are struggling to get really high quality candidates when they advertise for jobs. So that's why it's I think really timely to say, okay, here's the sort of things as an engineer, if you want to work in process safety and it is an exciting and rewarding career, then there's some fundamental things you should be able to do. And I think first and foremost, one of the key elements is understanding risk management and being able to not only participate in, but then eventually lead thorough risk assessment processes, whether that's hazard identification, whether it's your traditional hazard and operability study or HAZOP or PHA, process hazard analysis, depending on where you are in the world and what you call them. Building the skills to be able to facilitate those sort of activities is critically important in process safety engineers. So are also things like understanding the principles of inherently safer design. If you're involved in designing any equipment, you need to understand the principles of inherently safe design. And, you know, Trevor Kletz, the grandfather of process safety, once said, what you don't have can't leak. And that sums up the fundamental principle of inherently safer design. Can you eliminate the hazard? If you don't have it, it can't cause you a problem. So, you know, understanding the different elements of inherently safer design and making sure you actually apply them with rigor, not just always jump to the administrative controls. There's a number of times I see people say, oh, we'll fix that with a procedure. No, we'll fix it in the design if you don't want someone to make a mistake. Because I'll guarantee you at some point in time, some poor human is going to make a mistake.
Sure.
And if that mistake causes an incident, your system is not resilient enough and you need to go back and rethink that design. So I think that inherently safer design part is incredibly important. That technical risk assessment that I mentioned. So not only things like HAZOP and facilitating those risk assessments, but also getting skill and competence in some of the more quantitative assessment methodologies. So performing quantitative risk assessment, doing a layer of protection analysis, understanding and being able to do consequence modeling. These are all fundamental core process safety engineer skills that to really get anywhere as a process safety engineer going forward, you need to be able to do these things. Functional safety assessments as well, because ultimately we need to be able to quantify and justify what we're recommending in our designs or in our advice to companies. And if we can't determine that ourselves and certainly understand how it's determined, how on earth can we convince someone else it's important to do?
Exactly.
And yeah, I think the next element is, you know, a thorough understanding of safety management systems, because we're now not talking about just engineering systems. We're actually branching over into this other area that we call safety management. And safety management systems, you know, they usually fundamentally have 4 pillars. It's, you know, commit to process safety, assess the risks, manage the risks, and review and monitor and feedback. Sort of those 4 pillars are our general structure of any process safety management system. Understand what's in those pillars. Understand what the role different people play in that. Process safety engineers have a role to play in all of those pillars and other different parts in the organisation too, and learn who they are, start to get to know them and start to understand the aspects that actually are crossover between different parts in the organisation. whether it's working with procurement to make sure that when a piece of equipment is specified, what gets ordered and delivered actually meets the specification. Procurement have a role to play in process safety. So do finance, because they're the people that define the budgets that we spend and, define some of our cost-cutting activities. And so we've got all these sorts of things that we need to take into account as well. And the last thing that I actually think is probably one of the most important parts, and it's the non-technical part of being a process safety professional, it's leadership and communication. And if you can't communicate the needs of whatever your process safety risk assessment is or whatever it is you're working on, if you can't communicate to the non-technical person that needs to make the decision, the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, whoever it is that has the sign-off accountability, if you can't explain to them what you need them to do in a way they understand, you're never going to get the outcome you're after. And if they don't understand it, they will just move on. They won't wait for you to figure out how to tell them what the story is. So I actually think leadership communication, and one of the things I love doing and working with people on in storytelling, is critically important to deliver good process safety outcomes in industry. And so they're the core skills that any process safety engineer needs to know. We need to be technically competent in process safety, and we need to be able to communicate that technical material to our non-technical audience that make the decisions.
Yeah, very, very clear. Yeah, very clear. I think you covered everything, but I can take a little bit debate on that one because, as I told you, that I have been interacting with many process safety engineers in the industry, in different industries, refineries, petrochemical, and so on. So what I'm seeing recently that most of the process safety engineers they are only focused on the process safety management, as you mentioned, the process safety management pillars, and maybe they know the tools and techniques. Maybe they have the let's say the technical knowledge on the process safety and process safety management. But from my point of view, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I think that the process safety, also the process safety engineer, he should possess or he should own a very good knowledge of the process itself. So I cannot imagine that a process safety engineer that is working in a polyethylene plant or in a hydrocracker or CCR plant, and he has no idea about the all details and the operational details of this unit. I have seen that many times.
Yeah.
And
fundamentally,
this is a huge debate.
You cannot facilitate a risk assessment if you can't facilitate a risk assessment if you don't understand the process you're looking at. You just can't do it. Not effectively. You could tick the box, but you'll get a risk assessment that is wrong, basically. It wouldn't have picked up the hazards. So I agree. Fundamentally, whatever you do, whatever process you're working in, you need to understand the basic principles, at least, behind how that particular process functions. Because if you don't, you can't identify the hazards. And if you can't identify the hazards, you can't manage the risk.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that before having the technical competencies, which is very important as well, the technical competencies on the process safety, he should know the process itself. He should has the the sense of the operation of this units of the processes. Another thing about the competencies, let's take a step back, because you have highlighted very important thing, which is about the coherent or the robust design, right? So we need to really have a very robust, very rigorous design. And again, I have been in a discussion with many process safety engineers, and when we talk about anything related to the equipment design, they have no idea, and they suddenly mention that, oh, this is out of my scope, I cannot comment on that. Maybe we need some expert, or we can go for a third party to do the study, even if it's a small hazard study, or if we have any modification in the plant. But once it touched the process or the design, that he will grab his hand out and he said, this is out of my scope. I think this is also a very shortage in the skill or the knowledge of the process design that it should has, or the process safety engineer should has as well, right? So we need to like stress on that point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to make sure that we're, I suppose, we're communicating the I mean, there's a key part here that as engineers, we should always only work within our scope. So our scope is we understand and we are competent in certain fields, and they are the fields that we work in. However, we also need to be willing to expand our scope. And by that, it means we have to become competent in some other areas at times. And then we can actually take on some of those additional studies, additional activities, and additional work. But it's important that we don't just make the assumption that we're an engineer, we can do that. Understand your scope, work within your scope, but also work to expand your scope. It will also make you a far more valuable employee if you have an expanded scope.
Sure, yeah. The more you know, the more that you will have a big impact on within the corporate, yeah. Another thing which is very interesting, at least for me, that right now I'm looking for like a double major, like not only chemical engineers, but something else. So in most of the corporates or in most of the mindset of the chemical engineers, that the process safety engineer should be the chemical engineer. But we have a very good case that we have right now that the mechanical engineer can be not a good process safety engineer. He can be the reference for the process safety, as you, right? You are now like a reference for the process safety. Like for myself and many other colleagues, that once we have any process safety issue, the first person that we need to ask, we ask Trish. So is it possible for yeah, this is the truth, yeah. So is it possible for any mechanical engineer or any other discipline that he can shift to the process safety?
Absolutely, it is. I've met a lot of process safety professionals that don't have chemical engineering backgrounds. So I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that were originally trained within electrical engineering that found their way into process safety through functional safety assessments and looking at the electrical components, and then expanded their scope further. I also know of quite a few people that have science degrees originally, and Bachelor of Chemistry, Bachelor of Physics, that ended up in process safety related roles, again expanding their scope by developing their skill set and becoming competent in it. We need to remember, as an engineer, I think one of the key things about what any engineering discipline does, regardless of what sort of discipline it is, it teaches us how to think. It teaches us how to approach a problem and solve it. Now, we spend years at university honing these skills, focused on problems that are associated to our specific discipline. So, for example, mechanical engineering is probably one of the engineering disciplines that, to a certain extent, we're a little bit of a jack of all trades. We do some very basic electrical stuff. We do some very basic chemical stuff. We do some basic other elements of different disciplines, some basic structural and statics and dynamics work in university as well. We don't only do rotating equipment, integrity. We do all those things, but we also do all these other bits and pieces as well. So I actually think personally mechanical engineers are quite well equipped, because we're already learning little bits and pieces of all sorts of different disciplines when we do our core discipline as well. The other thing that's interesting as a mechanical engineer, so I actually majored in fluid dynamics. Well, computational fluid dynamics is all about consequence modeling in process safety. So all of a sudden, some of the core things I did at university actually even apply in my process safety career. So I think we learn to think, we learn to solve problems. We do learn it within specific fields. We can apply, we have proven that we can learn different concepts and different solutions. So we can apply those to different fields. So if there's anybody out there that is, I think you need to be science background, so science or engineering background, and you think, I'd love to become a process safety professional, go out and get some training in specific process safety fields, and then get some practice and find yourself a good coach or mentor to help you through that. Because what you're going to find is you can learn new things and you can develop. The catch is you've got to be able to learn those new things. So you've got to be able to understand, as you said, the concepts of the hazards and the process at the facility. So when I first went to work at a chemical company, I had never worked in chemical reactivity. And all of a sudden, I was a safety manager, including looking after process safety, dealing with 6 reactors in exothermic reaction using carcinogenic and flammable substances. So all of a sudden, I had to learn a lot. I had to learn a lot about exothermic reactions and how to control them and how to prevent them going wrong to be able to do my job. But I could learn that because I can learn things. Like most humans, we can all learn something. So it's around applying yourself to learn it. And I think there is the opportunity, if it's what you're interested in, to go and explore.
Yeah, sure. I'll take that chance to shout out for all the engineers from all the disciplines that don't limit yourself. You can be a process safety engineer, yeah, if you wish. Yeah,
Yes.
I would. Yeah, I would take from your statement about the training because also this is another thing that I have been that there is a huge traffic on getting some certificates from many boards about the process safety. I have seen many that they don't have any background of the process safety and they just like running after the certification. They thought that the certificate may get them the job. So we need also to talk about that. Is it really important to get like a prestigious certificate in the process safety, like a functional safety, or even another process safety, like yeah, and any other process safety? Like I don't want to name. We have many. We have like hundreds of certificates here. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I think if those courses are useful in teaching you the fundamental basics and what I would refer to as the knowledge. But doing a training course does not make you competent in anything. Doing a training course gives you knowledge. To build competence, you actually need to practice and you need to get experience in that area. And so doing the training gives you important and critical knowledge, but it does not make you an expert, and it actually doesn't even make you competent in that field. It just makes you someone with some knowledge. So I think doing the training is a fundamental first step. You've got to understand the principles of what you're looking at, but then you actually need to go out and exercise that. You need to have a mentor or someone that is going to coach you and supervise you and help you learn. And then you actually just have to get some experience and do it yourself. And so there's those 3 stages in becoming competent in something. We call them learning through education, learning through others, and learning through experience. And the rough percentage of what you need to do to become competent is about 10% learning through education, 20% learning through others, and 70% learning through experience. So you've just got to go out and practice it. And that's why there is currently 2 organizations that offer a process safety sort of professional recognition of some sort. One being the Institution of Chemical Engineers, where I used to work, the Professional Process Safety Engineer. And the other one is the American Institute of Chemical Engineers offer these
The
CCPSC.
Yeah.
So basically certified in process safety. Now, both of those are actually based on your competence, not just your knowledge. So the ICHEME process, you are required to actually demonstrate your competence, and that is assessed through a series of reports and an interview process where you have to actually be able to speak to your competence. So simply doing a training course is not going to get you through that program. Likewise, the US program, the AICHE program, that also has a whole series of requirements demonstrating your competence, and then they do have an exam as their assessment process. But still, you're not going to get through that if you don't have a lot of experience to build that competence. So there's the certification part of going and doing a training course to get some knowledge. And I would encourage people to do that, but don't think that's the end of it. Then you need to actually go and get the experience, get the practice, become competent, and then go for one of those 2 professional registrations, because they really are very much a badge that says, I've been assessed by competent people that I am competent in process safety.
Yeah, fully agree. I think the first step is to get the knowledge and experience first, the solid knowledge and solid experience, and later on we can look for the certification, which is it's like an assurance for our knowledge and experience here. So I would take that for another thing, another topic that also within our competencies, but maybe a little bit away, but it has some interaction with the competencies as well. But
Mhm.
for some activities for the process safety engineers, like doing some HAZOP study or some LUPA or whatever, or risk assessment, I have seen that many process safety, they need to stick to the corporate standards. While maybe we have some cases that we need to think out of the box and look at some other standards, right? We shouldn't be stick to I wouldn't mention any name, but okay, like XYZ corporate, and we have standards and we need to stick with it. But we still have some international global like standards that it can be applicable as well. So I want to hear from you that should we stick to the corporate standards even if it's not fulfilling the requirements, or should we like look for like a wider scope?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky question. I think any corporate standard has been established for a reason. So that means if you're going to deviate from it, you need a valid reason, and you should be able to justify that valid reason. Again, communication, explaining why, justify the reason for the deviation, and then there should be a process where that deviation can be approved by an appropriate person in the organization. So, for example, in the process safety area, we often have what we refer to as technical authorities in an organization. And depending on what level of technical authority you are, there are certain standards you can authorize deviation from. And so, if it's the ultimate top corporate standard, then the highest level technical authority for process safety in the organization should have the authority to be able to sign that deviation and say, yes, you can go and do this because it is a better outcome than our standard is. So I think it's critical to understand that the corporate standards, they're important and we need to follow them. But if they're not right, we do need a structured process, and it does need to be structured and thorough to ensure that we're not introducing a risk we're not aware of. A structured process to deviate from that standard for a particular purpose. And provided we have that structure set up and everybody understands who is accountable for all the aspects of it, then we can go ahead and do that. I don't see a problem at all in deviating from corporate standards, provided we've followed the appropriate process and we have the appropriate authorities to do so.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, very clear. Okay. After finishing the very interesting part of the knowing the competencies of the process safety engineers, we need to move to the next part, which is, I think it's even still very interesting, and we will have a lot of debate on that one. Along the recent years, that and all the corporates, that the process safety has been facing many challenges within the corporates. So we need to know more about those kind of challenges that face the process safety within the corporates. There is so many, and we need also to know how to overcome those challenges to survive as a process safety engineer or whatever that we have right now. Many challenges like the energy transition, the AI, digital transformations, many challenges that we have. So we need to discuss about that one to like show our audience what kind of challenges that we have, that they need to make sure that they know those challenges.
Yeah, so there is certainly a lot of challenges going on at the moment. And in fact, one of the things that in the business world we often refer to is we're currently living in what's called VUCA times: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And each of those four elements bring in a range of different challenges in how we make decisions and what we actually do. So, the volatility that we're seeing at the moment in global economies, stock markets, the trade wars and tariffs that we're seeing going on, this is impacting the financial viability of a lot of organizations. And when organizations are suffering financially, they'll tend to make quite radical cost reductions at times. And that can have significant process safety implications. So, that volatility is certainly a significant area. The next one, uncertainty. Well, there's certainly a lot of uncertainty globally at the moment in terms of what directions things are going in, but also in particular around as we go through the energy transition, uncertainty as to which are going to be the forms of energy that we end up settling on as our preferences going forward. So the world is still very heavily coal-fired, fair bit of nuclear and natural gas, but we've got to do something around, the coal-fired and eventually the natural gas. So, what's going to be the next one? Are we going to be going hydrogen in a big way, or are we going to be going ammonia as a hydrogen carrier?
Yeah.
Or is there something else out there that we haven't even invented yet? Is it solar and wind? Well, how much solar and wind do we actually need to build to be able to do base load and all those sorts of things? And how do we store it? The battery capacities. All of this is still, to a certain extent, quite uncertain. And we do need to work through resolving a lot of these issues so that we can progress forward. And process safety has a huge role to play in all of that. And that's where the complexity comes in, because we need to be on top of all the complexity around and make sure that we take the time to identify the hazards of the decisions and pathways that we're taking. Because if we can't identify those hazards, we have no way of managing that risk. And if we don't manage it, we will have significant and catastrophic events occur because we just didn't manage the hazard that we had. One of the things I do often talk about is that there's actually no new hazards in this world. Even with the energy transition, there's no new hazards. The hazards are all the same. How the hazards present and turn into risks changes. So, and the reason the hazards are the same is because the laws of physics and chemistry have not changed. A flammable substance is flammable and will always be flammable. So we need to just accept if we're dealing with something like hydrogen, it's flammable. Some of these fundamentals don't change, but how we apply them does. We've been dealing with hydrogen for decades, but have we been dealing with it in such volumes at such pressures? Well, now we're getting a little bit different, but we have dealt with other things at really high pressure. So again, dealing with high pressure is something that we can do. We need to bring all of these things together, and that's that complexity of bringing all the different arms together so that we can actually eliminate the ambiguity that we're facing around. And so I think that, to me, is some of the key challenges of what we're seeing at the moment. The fact that we are stuck in the middle of probably one of the most VUCA events I've seen in my lifetime at the moment, with everything going on. There are wars going on. There are, all sorts of stock shortages of certain substances. We're in quite significant, challenging times at the moment. And that's when process safety engineers, I think, we need to be present and we need to be highlighting that, okay, here's where we can save, here's what we can do, here's what we can improve, but here's what we can't touch. This is sacred. You can't touch this, because if you do, there's a potential for incident, and that potential is a business killer for us. And so I think we need a lot of courage at the moment to stand up and be able to say what needs to be said and push back against some of these things. And sadly, that courage is one of the most challenging things at times, because sometimes it can be career limiting to stand up and say, no, we can't do that. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that I see.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that with the VOCA that we have right now and the really challenges that we have, especially in the, I would speak that very frankly, especially in the economic, right? So this is the very limiting agent in the industry. So especially in the process safety, if we need like more protection layer, or we need to do some further study, but we are limited in a budget. So we will sacrifice of our like safety and just because of we don't have the budget because of the economic situation. So I think this is a very, very challenging point for all the process safety in this profession, that they really should defend, as I'm always saying, that on their the beliefs or defend on the process safety. We cannot sacrifice, right? We cannot sacrifice on those. We still have this. Otherwise, we will have a big disaster every day, and this will cost even more. So I think even with this one, it should be highlighted there. The other challenge that I'm yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Trish.
I was just going to add, though, one of the things that as process safety professionals we need to learn to do is understand the economic benefit of what we're proposing. Because we often get caught up in saying, so we need to do this because if we don't, the incident will be really expensive and we want to avoid the cost. But there's no guarantee we'll pay that cost because there's a chance the incident might happen. And if it's a really low chance, the business might decide to wear that chance. But when we put in place solid process safety management regimes, we actually get reliable plant. And when our plant is reliable, we can make money. So I think we need to also be willing to turn the argument around and not only argue it's safety and we should do it because safety is important and we don't want to kill people. Absolutely, that is a given. But also I can make you money here too. Because the moment I tell the people that are concerned about the finances that I can make you money here as well, they're going to be even more interested. So sometimes we need to shift the paradigm of what we talk about and say, process safety is actually good business. Getting it right gives you reliable plant, and reliability allows you to make money. And that is a key, particularly in an economically difficult time.
Yeah, I think it's a very good advice that we need to add some dollar sign within any study that we do to show the business impact for sure. Yeah, I believe the other challenge that we are facing recently, and it's going like very viral, which is the AI. So some people that mentioned that okay, we can apply or we can use the AI to help the process safety. I have seen many applications on that. It's working very well, but also the adoption of the corporate for those one. We need also to talk about the challenge of the AI adoption and digital transformation and so on the process safety or from the process safety perspective.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about the use of AI or machine learning to do your risk assessments for you. And that worries me because that's not the point of it. However, the application of AI and machine learning in assisting with the risk assessments, there's real power in that. If you've got the ability to be able to data mine and come up with all sorts of credible examples of where similar things have occurred as you prepare to go into the risk assessment, you're going to get a better outcome in that risk assessment because you can actually deal with the people that will inevitably say, that can't happen. And you go, well, actually, it has. And here's an example of where it has happened. So what are our control measures that we can put in place to deal with this? So I think using AI as a means to enhance our ability and our data input into risk assessments, I think there's real value in that. I think that's a great opportunity. What we need to be very careful about is that we're not assuming AI can do our risk assessments for us. AI can data mine and it can pull information out. It can put it in various different formats for us. But at the end of the day, it's our human brains that need to look at that and interpret it and understand whether it's actually telling us something important or is it just data. Data is important, but it's not useful until we give it insight. And so, the AI, the machine learning stuff, it's not giving us insight yet. It's giving us data, which is critically important, and it can churn data much faster than a human brain can, without doubt. So let's use it for what it's really good at. So I think for me, that's a key part of it. The other part is just because we've got a new, exciting technology out there, just because we can doesn't necessarily mean we should use it. It has to be the right application. We can, put all sorts of different things in, but is it actually giving us a material benefit in safety? Or is it just fun and interesting to use because it's a new latest technology? If it's not giving us an actual material benefit in safety, why are we wasting our time? Go and find something that will do you a better service than maybe the toy you want to play with, but perhaps you shouldn't.
Agree. I believe I'm fully agree with you that the AI or the machine learning application, this should be the tools that the process safety or the expert process safety engineer he should use to save him some time and efforts. Like in some data analysis, yes, doing some analysis, doing some correlations that he can use. And I'm seeing that it needs a lot of testing and bootstrapping for many like softwares to be applied within the process safety within the industry. So until we make sure that it can work effectively and we can trust those models or whatever. Yeah. So I'm fully agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can also get some really weird stuff coming out of AI. So yesterday I wanted to create an image to use in a presentation, and I wanted an analog clock that showed me 7 minutes past 2.
Okay.
And so I asked AI to draw me an analog clock that showed me 7 minutes past 2.
Okay.
And it drew me an analog clock face that showed me 10 minutes to 2. And then in a digital writing on the clock face, it said 2:07.
Mm.
And it's like,
Mm.
wow, that's a weird interpretation. But obviously the AI was not capable of drawing the time on the clock. So it actually just took, if you think about every clock sale you've ever seen, the advertisement for every clock, the time shown
It's
on the
10.
clock is
Yeah.
10 minutes to 2.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was the
Exactly.
only clock face I could get any AI to generate for me. It's like, but that's not what the time I want. This is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I believe.
even you can give it detailed prompts and you can still get weird stuff coming out.
Sure. Sure. I believe that that is called the AI hallucination. That I still need more training, yeah, to get like more robust results. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we came to the end of our interesting episode. I would really again to really thank you, Trish, for your time. I know that you have been very busy recently, so traveling a lot. So really thank you for your time. Very valuable information, yeah, for sure. And I wish that we can like host you again in another episode to talk in more topics related to the process safety. So once again, really thank you, Trish. Yeah,
Absolutely my pleasure. Stay safe, everybody.
yeah, thank you.